Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to Synchronicity Web TV. I am your host, Nadiya Shah, and this is your moment of synchronicity. Well, I'm so excited to celebrate with you today, Giorgia Pecora. I hope I'm saying that right, but I know she's a Visionary Astrology, and I'm so in love with Visionary Astrology, and I'm so happy to celebrate Giorgia with you here today. Now, she is somebody actually that I've been following online. I share her stuff in my Instagram stories, and it is just so wonderful to now get to work with her as part of Synchronicity University, because Giorgia is a part of the May 2025 speaker series. And as this is publishing, you've got just a couple days left to choose your tuition rate. There's always just $5 a class to learn from Giorgia and these other incredible astrologers. I know that we are going to just dive in and have an experience of love and wisdom together. Giorgia, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Hi, so nice to see you. I always love to spend time, connecting with other astrologers. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. And it is just so wonderful to see your content online because, I mean, you obviously are a brilliant astrologer. And for those of you out there, it is Visionary Astrology. You can find Giorgia all over online on her website, her Instagram, where I first started interacting with her. But I love that there's this spiritual, wisdom oriented side to what it is you do, how it is that you present astrology. So I'd love to hear about that. Like, what motivates you in terms of your relationship with the sky, because it is so infused with love and wisdom, and I'd love to hear more about that.
I think it comes on with the fact that I love people. Like I know it's a very Aquarian way to put it. You know, yesterday I was walking with a friend and we were just like chatting about, what moves you? I mean, I'm interested in how people are interconnected and like what can we do in order to support each other. Like I don't know, I see this reality as some sort of game at times, which is like if we know a bit the rules, for example, with astrology, if we got like some hints, it's more like treasure hunting more than anything, right? Not interested in the identification of your natal chart, but it's like if opening this door can bring you to a higher connection with the divine, the divine, not just in the sense of like, God and goddesses, because I know when we talk about spirituality, I'm noticing this when I'm talking, there is a certain level of trigger that comes up to many people, like and praying and devotion and God and goddesses or higher connection. I think working with astrology helps you to break down all these elements and bringing this to your everyday life. A bit the sixth house, 12th house dynamic, right? Like body and soul. Because I think it's really, really important to stay connected with our soul and our spirit. That's the reason why I also study evolutionary astrology, have a quite long background in shamanic studies. I study astro shamanism, so I combine these two things. But it's so beautiful to see how we can interact with our soul in this magic way. We're in this age of being hyper rational. It has to make sense. You have to prove it. And now sometimes I wonder, do you have to prove it? Like, is it necessary to prove it? What about following the synchronicity and the magic and the signs and just move from there? So I don't know. I live life in this way, and it's quite fun. Yeah, it's quite fun,
Yeah.
and I see like art coming through. So I don't know if I'm making sense, like sharing this. It's like it's too abstract, but
No, it makes total sense. Absolutely. Yeah. It's interesting because earlier, just before we started recording, we were talking about, how you spent a lot of time in England. I did as well. And so I know that, it can be it's a very different culture, astrologically speaking, right? Over there. And, I did my MA there. It was one of the astrology MAs. In cosmology and divination. It was Jeffrey Cornelius's program. Yeah, he was the late great Jeffrey Cornelius. And I know that this whole idea of like rigor, right? Like scholarship. I mean, that seems to be a part of the expression of a majority, at least what I saw, of the astrology community and how they present astrology. And it is so much about what you can prove. And I remember when I was there so many years ago, attending an astrology conference, and this person got up and said, I am a psychological astrologer. Yes, I am. And it was like this rebellious statement to make, because everybody there was like, oh no, you've got to be traditional and you've got to be scientific and you've got to do research and everything. And then here was this person saying, like, no, I use this for self-knowledge. I use this as part of understanding myself and helping my clients understand themselves. And I think as an evolutionary astrologer, even though I'm not one, I can't say that. I know I've been very influenced by evolutionary astrology. It is also about self-knowledge, but it's about spiritual knowledge of self that tends to be at the foundation of it. So I love that we are in a time when, especially as astrologers, there's enough room for everybody, I think. Like, that's the thing. That's the wonderful thing about it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think we got as many, as many tools, as many people, as many teachers, as many students, because there's also a certain kind of attachment. Like, what is the right way to do spiritual things, or what is the right way to learn astrology? I just don't know why people get so attached to that, because I'm a modern astrologer. I have a karmic evolutionary background. I'm specialized in transgenerational astrology. So I do all these things that be like woo-woo. I work with spirits and mystery. Uh, but I don't see why we have to choose something over the other, because I think all roads lead to Rome at the end of the day. Like, for example, there is a colleague of ours that is a horary astrologer. I love horary astrology, basically asking a question, and based on the sky of the moment, you can have an answer. And it could be about all possible things, right? Like you can't find your keys. And then you're asking the astrologer, and like through the chart, it's like, can you see that? Yeah, it's possible. Through the chart, you can get some insights. So in my case, sometimes I just sending questions, because it just does like written reports, like about practical things. For example, I'm writing my book, and I was like, is it a good time to write a book? And he sends me these amazing, amazing answers. But at the same time, I've never managed to do anything like that. Like, I can do written work. It has a certain kind of rules. And I'm like, great, there is a person for every sort of need in any specific moment. But I think like the goal, like, is for me, I'm more interested as a evolutionary astrologer on the why. It's like, why you're here, which are the unsolved things that your soul is repeating in this lifetime. Because this idea is, so we have the soul and we got the ego, right? And as an evolutionary astrologer, we don't want to destroy the ego. We love the ego. It's the sun. So we're having like the sun moon dynamic, and then when we're looking at the soul, like we got Pluto. But the idea is that in each lifetime, we are entering like a new character or a different culture with a different name, a different style, but the direction is always the same. We're gonna go back to the source, right? We're gonna have this idea, this goal on a collective soul level. But we tend to repeat, especially in the first time of our lives, we are in these loops. So, and the question is, okay, what your soul is trying to learn or master in this lifetime. So when we are looking at some of the steps that there are in the chart, we can literally rewrite our own story in a different way. But in order to do that, you need to have a specific interest in past lives, for example. And some people just like, I don't want to deal with that. Great, amazing. So yeah, there is space for everyone. We got teachers of all possible flavors. Also with our systems, it's like astrology could get so technical. Because, for example, I wouldn't say, to be honest with you, and then I don't think I'm the most technical astrologer. I mean, I know many things, but it's more, I'm very interested on the connection, just like connecting with the person, see where they're at, going back, to the core element of spirituality. Is like, what is your connection with self, with others, with nature, with higher powers? What is your existential wound, if there is one? Are you afraid of freedom? Are you afraid of loneliness? How are you present in the moment? What helps you to be present? Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. And you said something interesting that intrigued me. You said you are a transgenerational astrologer. Like, can you talk about that? What is that?
Yeah. So we're working in transgenerational dynamics. We got intergenerational, so first generation, and transgenerational, like let's say second, third, 25th generation. So intergenerational is the connection between me and my parents, and transgenerational is between me and my grandparents, and so on and so forth. So the idea is that the family tree is a living creature. It's a very smart living creature. And every person that we are bringing to the tree has a function. So if like there is a system of co-regulation that is given by all the members involved. And when we're looking at this from an astrological standpoint, so sometimes what I do, imagine I have like 20, 25 charts on the floor. I'm just going to look at all of them and collect all the data. And we see if there are repetitions, if there are traumas, if there are things that are being unsolved. We want to see which are the talents that we are taking in heritage from our past, because, you know, it's not, we're talking lots about trauma, intergenerational trauma, transgenerational trauma, but there are also gifts. So the question is, which are the blessing and the curses that we are taking with us from our past? So there are some specific positions, but also simply, for example, the repetition of an element. You know, what are you observing in a family tree? I can give you my example. I got no earth in my chart, and I come from a very, like, generations of very earthy people. I got no earth, and I got Mars in Sagittarius on the midheaven. I'm the first one that left. But then what I'm interested in is like, okay, so here there is a need of a change of scene. Why? Based on what? What is the relationship that the rest of the tree has with movement? My father was a sailor, but then like he left Sicily and from Sicily and then he came back. So you see, there is something there. There are different people in the family that say, oh my God, I wish I had the life you do. I'm not living my life, I'm repeating someone else's script. So you're also analyzing which kind of conditioning we have. Because there is like, for example, this book is called Didn't Start With You. It's a very interesting book if people are into this sort of topics. Like through lots of research, you notice that there are lots of unconscious things that we do because of our ancestral line. For example, there is this woman that had asthma, so that has some respiratory issues. It's turned that the grandfather died in a concentration camp because of gas. You know, like this is a quite extreme example, but just to give you an idea. You also study dates and names. Like we got this tendency of giving, at least like in the south of Italy, is quite common. You got the same name as your grandparent, right? You're giving the story of this person to the following one. So, and when we're looking at that in combination with a natal chart, that, oh, is there a repetition? Maybe there is a nodal relationship there, or Pluto is touching some of your personal planets and there is an opening. Is there any sort of legacy that you have to honor in your lineage? Or there is also something that you have to move on from, because there is also an order, first in terms of position. For example, an elder sibling is an elder one for a reason, and the younger one is a younger one for a reason. But we got different goals. So let's say when we're working with it like familiar, transgenerational, ancestral dynamic, then you're looking at 3 siblings, and then you got the first one that has a stellium in house number 4. That is house of roots and family and background. There is some sort of there is something we need to take care of from our line. So literally 4th house, my roots are asking me, please, can you take care about this for the next generation? Sometimes also could be a burden, you know, like depending on the element. Well, some other people maybe go a stellium, many planets. Stellium is when you got lots of planets close to each other. In house number 10, that is the house that is the opposite of the 4th. So the 4th is here. I love to think about the 10th house, the house of the public and what comes next. Like you have to leave behind the 4th and walk towards the 10th, right? And maybe you have to go, you have to leave, you gotta have to start something new. Like you have to honor a profession that is needed by the tree. So then you leave. And then there is this question, like one is staying, one is leaving. So there are like these big kind of unwritten, let's say, rules or unconscious dynamics that are there. And with this transgenerational dynamic, you can look at them. So you can work with them on a systematic level, meaning you take charts of several people in the family tree, at least the one you have, or you just look at your own chart. And you are looking at your chart from a generational standpoint. So let's say you have a sun opposite Uranus 1/7, right? So there is this dynamic 1/7. So this is telling me that in the family tree, there's been something that changed or needs to be changed, or some sort of revolution, or some sort of drama, or some sort of disruption in the world of relating. So there is something that has been disrupted, and in your own life, there is a new kind of relating that we need to bring in the tree. So the chart is not you anymore. It's to describe the family itself. It's quite interesting. Yeah, anyway, I can keep on going for
Oh, I
hours.
love
So
it. Yeah, please do. I love it. I mean, I'm thinking as you're talking about a few things. So one is, it makes so much sense. Like, it just makes sense that if, for example, we know that certain psychological patterns continue through generations, so it makes sense that that would show up in the astrology, that certain astrological patterns might continue in the generations of charts that you're looking at. I mean, it is quite the endeavor to actually go and look up the charts of people going back generations, right? Like that. Hopefully people cared about documenting that. That's the thing, like, especially getting the right time. That isn't always possible. And yet it must be very powerful, like you said, to even just contemplate the elements can be a very powerful thing, whether you see commonalities or you see that there's been a pattern but you are not of that pattern. Both are very valuable insights to gain, to understand what your place is within all those generations and what might be coming up ahead for future generations and what your role might be in that. And I love how you talked about it's this journey, like we're walking a journey from the 4th to the 10th. Because literally, for those who are students of astrology, when you look at the chart, it literally is like you're walking from the 1st to the 12th. So when you get to the 4th, you're at the foundation, the most private part of the chart, as you said. And from there, you're coming out more and more, right? You're becoming more and more visible. You're gathering more. And I know that we as astrologers, we talk about rising, like the planets start rising in the western half of the chart from the 4th to the 10th, and then they get to the 10th, and then they start setting. And that tends to represent culmination a lot more. When they're rising, they're gaining energy that much more. And it's so powerfully symbolic of how we in our lives will gain energy as we move from home and our childhood to what it is our destiny might be, what it is our legacy might be, which is the 10th house, which is what the 10th house represents. But then ultimately, the 10th house is also what it is that we end up leaving for our descendants, for future generations, what we might be known for by them.
We are the ancestors of the future, right? And I think there's always a thing to remember to ourselves. It's like, okay, we are talking about our relationship to the past. And that's also the other element that is quite important with evolutionary and karmic astrology. It's like, why do we deal with the past? Because in order to understand the future, we have to understand the past, but it's like it's a non-linear continuum, right? Like all these things are always connected. Like let's say we're looking at the chart and in previous lifetime you've been incarcerated. Okay, how am I gonna use this piece of information in this lifetime? We are taking this feeling with us. I'm feeling imprisoned. This is the thing we want to work with. So the generations after us won't have the same feeling, because we got this thing that is called invisible loyalties. So that's the term. So it's like when you're unconsciously loyal to the suffering of a parent, to the suffering of an ancestor. So poverty, betrayal, abandonment. And then when you see how the past has been shaping them, and how much is shaping us, there is also something that happens on a mental level. It's like, wait a minute, I didn't decide to manifest myself in this time and space to stay confined in that story. And if you're the first ones that manage to break certain patterns, we are creating such an amount of opportunities for the generations to come. You see, that's what I'm interested in. I'm like, okay, I've been living through certain things, but even giving the space for the next ones, like to play from their own full potential, how's this gonna look like? You know, I don't have any Nadiya, but I have nephews. I have two nephews that I love to bits. And it's really this question of like, I know, and I have a certain level of awareness of the things that I've been lacking. How can I help you with this? And they see, they come to me a lot. They're asking for a piece of advice, also when I give them economical support. And it's just nice to be in that position, like of being able to help. And they do the same for the people around them. So you could really see how easily this spreads. That's the beauty of it. Yeah.
It's powerful to consider. And also, I don't know about you, but I feel like we are a part of many different types of lineage. And so we have like our physical ancestors. And like you said, with your nephews, you have that connection on that level of physical. But then I feel like I am the descendant of every astrologer that ever was. And so, just like we have our, like you said, this beautiful phrase that you just said, which was, we are the ancestors of the future. And so, to me, like we are also the astrological ancestors of future astrologers. And I love the thought of that. And I believe that so much. That is a type of lineage as well that we participate in. And anytime that we find ourselves really drawn to maybe a certain intellectual school or tradition or a religious school or tradition, for example, right? And these are just some examples. These become a part of what we might contribute to for future generations as well, simply because we practiced it, simply because we were in that community that in and of itself meant, even if we didn't go on to, because you and I, again, earlier were talking about events and conferences and things like that. And it's great fun to meet with other astrologers, absolutely. And what you'll find, and I've seen this because I've been going to astrology conferences for about 20 years now. And there's some people who, we kind of started out in the same place and we all like sort of have made our space. We've claimed our space in our own way. We have our communities. We continue to grow and nurture those communities and so on. But there are also a lot of people who I've seen again and again for so many years, and they're not necessarily hustling, as I like to say, right? They're not out there like making contacts and like, oh, yeah, I do this and I do that and check out my Instagram. And they're not, or my YouTube or whatever. They're not doing any of that. They're just there because they love astrology. They want to learn about astrology. They go to the talks and they like to be in the downtime and they like to go to the banquet and they like it's just this whole idea of being with people like you, being with people where you don't feel like an alien. They're all speaking your own language, right? It's a very powerful thing to consider. And so, yeah, as you were talking, I was thinking about how even those people who just show up at the conferences, who may not necessarily be like angling for a speaker spot or anything like that, they're not thinking like that, still they're a part of what ultimately we in astrology and as astrology as a whole are going to leave for future generations.
Yeah, and that's the power of the circle because mostly I'm a teacher. It's like I love to offer consultations, but there is something about the power of the group of the circle. Like I just came back from this pilgrimage in Egypt, and we were just like traveling and working with astrology, and it was about like karmic astrology, and we're going to temples on the way. And it's so interesting, like just pick 15 strangers, and then in 12 days, you create a soul family there. Just like, wow, how that works. It's like because we think a lot about all the things that are separating us. But the question is, which other things there were in common? Going back to the lineages, yeah, we got ancestral lineage, epigenetics, family systems, bloodline, great, very important. But we also have a soul lineage. And it's like, it's so beautiful when is this question like, what is a soul family to you? How do you define that in your life? It's just like, what these people that are there, look, sometimes I think about ourselves as this, with this sorts of wires, and they were just like moving around with these lines that we are following, just meeting up. Today, like I was walking around by Lisbon yesterday, and I was like, today I may meet like my next soulmate or my next best friend or my best client. Like, you don't know. There are all these people that are there to connect with you. And spiritually, like having your spiritual circle teachers, your guides, your archetypes, also the cultural energies you resonate with, because you know you also have a moon in Sag, among lots of Sag as well. Like it's so amazing going to different places, different cultures, and collecting all these elements that are enriching you, or vocational groups, it's like groups of artists. This is also the reason why I come to Portugal a lot. There is this group of artists, healers, writers that are always creating, and that just by accident ended up in this bubble. And you see the possibility of creation there. So when we're feeling alone, it's really this question: are we ever alone really? And if so, is there a circle? Is there a group that you can join? Because I see this, you know, with my astrological classes. Like the forum is very active. Like I'm very interested in the social aspect of it. And it's so beautiful to see people becoming friends and share things. Like even with the conferences, one of my goals is to go with some of my students, you know, and it feels like a bit this school university excursion. I was like, you know, guys, let's go together to a conference. And yeah, they just fun with that.
I
So
love it.
yeah.
Yeah. Whether you're doing the conference online, like it's great online. We can reach people more than ever before. But there's something about being with people in person. And I think that is part of a really interesting contrast that I think we're going to see more and more of. Like this, there's this with all this air energy that's about to kick in, right? Because right now we're like in, or we've been in earth and water. And one by one, these planets are starting to move into air and fire, right? One by one. And for me personally, I mean, yeah, I can work with just about anything, but I do have a fire moon and an air sun. So it seems like it's going to work well, and has been so far, yes. But what I find really interesting is that in a way, we're more connected than ever and online, and people can learn online. And just like you'll be teaching at Synchronicity University, it's so far pretty much an entirely online space so far. Um, there's that, but then there's this other type of experience that people also need and crave and want, and that is the in-person experience, right? To know others, to touch others, to be in a room where everybody is there sort of sharing an energetic space, if you will. Now, if it's something like a tour group, like you were talking about, and especially when it is a tour group that has a certain intention behind it, that is spiritual, that is evolutionary, just the awareness itself adds to the element of, okay, there's something sacred going on here, but there always is also, right? And that's really what we're
Yeah,
going
yeah.
for. Yeah, that's really what we're seeking. We're seeking an experience of the sacred. And we know that we often, not always, but often we need to be in community, or at least in the presence of others, in order to experience, or at least have the likelihood of the experience of the sacred rise for us that much more.
Yeah, and we learn about relating, you know, as simple as it sounds. You know, we could read all the books, but you gotta relate. There's not much to go around that. I think, you know, it's also interesting between the live and the online thing, um, to treat them as two different containers, right? Because, like, for example, I love the online. I'm a double Aquarian with a Mercury in Aquarius. It's like, I love the magic of it. You know, for example, the conversation we're having right now, I have all sorts of friends and also colleagues all over the world that I found online. And I love that. I love the possibility of having a connection in time and space, like in a way I haven't done before. At the same time, the somatic uh, resonance is lower. So, because of course, you know, I was seeing this when I was at the event in Egypt, just like I was teaching some, and then you could see with the body language, you know, and it's a way easier, of course, because you can read the room a lot. You can still look at things, but it's a different level of experience. So it's this question of, I think, yeah, the Aquarian Leo part. Because with the Aquarians, it's like we see the way in which we are interconnected, that you got the chance to connect with people you never thought before. But then with the live one, you see the living constellation, like the body feels the field.
Yeah.
So in terms of somatic experiences, it's different. I think it's great to have both. Like, because to be honest with you, I really love my daily writing or when I write my newsletters, I go because I feel I'm interacting with the void somehow
Mm.
because I'm like, I'm putting these words out there and I don't know where they go. But then the image that they are going somewhere, and then sometimes people reply and like I was walking in the park, I had this thought, and then your words came, and I felt these words were written for me. And then I think, oh my God, this is such a privilege to have. Like I love to be that. I love just to feel like someone that is whispering something to you. And also in terms, I mean, I think that the main point, and again, the Aquarian in me, is accessibility. Things are getting way more accessible. And especially like with your program, when I saw the university, I was like, oh, I love that. That's totally like what I stand for. It's just like with your line world, it's accessible, like literally for everyone. It's such a big revolution if you think of it. Yeah.
Isn't it? I mean, I think it is amazing that we manifested the internet. Like, I think that says a lot about what we understand as humanity, about our consciousness, about our interconnectedness, because astrology sort of relies on this idea that the external and the internal are deeply connected, that there's this ongoing dance, this ongoing synchronicity is ultimately one of the inner world and the outer world. And the fact that we manifested the internet to me says a whole lot about what it is that we are understanding about our inner world, but really about how deeply connected we really are. And so it's fascinating to see resistance to that happens also, right? Like it feels sometimes with history that it's like two steps forward and one step back, right? There's that tension. And so whenever I hear people talk about, oh, we have to just think about people of our own citizens or our own country, whatever. And I know this is probably because I'm Canadian. Like it's probably that. I mean, I remember my mom, I was telling her that I was out because I travel a lot. I just completed like 50 countries. Guatemala was my 50th country. And so I was really excited about that. I had that goal, I made it happen. And while I was in Guatemala, actually, I had somebody who was helping me out for the day. He was driving me around to a few different places. And we stopped at a gas station because I was like, hey, I want some water and things like that. And I went in the gas station, and then I'm talking to the lady who was behind the counter. And I was calling her friend. I was like, amiga, what do you think about this? ¿Qué piensas de eso? And I was like kind of touching her hand at moments, and I was just looking at her and talking. And she was smiling and she was lovely. So we leave, and then the driver says to me, I've never seen anybody treat them like that. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, people just don't treat workers that way. Like they just don't. And I was kind of struck by that because what he was really saying is, I treated her like an equal, right? And so I was thinking about that. And I said to my mom, wow, he said that, I treated her like an equal. And she said, yeah, well, I think it's because you're Canadian. And I was like, yeah, that's a good point. I think that's what we do as Canadians. We're like that. We're very proud of being that way, right? We can be very inclusive and we're very personable and we love to help people out, but also we love to connect. I think really like I mean, look, there's always different ways in which to understand any given nationality. I know it depends on who you ask, but my experience of being born and raised in Canada is that we are gentle, inclusive, lovely people, in my humble opinion. Now, I don't know. I don't know if it's just a Canadian thing or if it's like a person thing, but when I hear people, the fact that people wouldn't be that way to me is more shocking than me being that way. Me being that way surprised this person who I was with for the day. But to me, it was more surprising that people wouldn't be treating them that way? So, yeah, I don't know. I just felt like throwing it out that we think of ourselves as so separate. And I don't know, maybe some people find comfort in that. But to me, that just never really made sense because of our shared humanity, right? I heard a phrase recently that said, our what is it? Our backgrounds are different, but our experiences are the same. It was something along those lines. And it basically meant that we all know love, right? We all want to know love. We all know what it is to deeply care about someone or something. And we all want to deeply care about someone and something. We all want to feel special. We all want to feel like we stand out. We all want to feel like we belong, that we're part of something bigger, or at least a part of others, right? That we're not just isolated on our own. And so, yeah, it's so fascinating to me that we wouldn't have this idea of the shared humanity right at the surface. But I think that this is part of what we as a collective are going to have to figure out over the coming years, because the very nature of air is about being connected, but it has such a strong duality to it as an element where it's also hyper individualistic as well.
Yeah, I'm listening to you. I'm like, I feel it's turning into Aquarians having a
That's
conversation.
so true. Oh my God. Yes, we are both Aquarians. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, she's not only Canadian, she's also an Aquarian, a
True.
Canadian
Yeah.
Aquarian. That's another level of it. No, I totally agree with you. I'm just, I'm wondering how this is going to work on a society level, like with Pluto that just entered Aquarius, because Pluto just going to bring up all the shadow sides of certain aspects of, in this case, of literally describing the Aquarian archetype, the community, the collective, the way in which we are interconnected, and which are the limits of it. Because we already had a bit of that when Saturn entered Aquarius, right? A couple of years ago, and we got COVID, and there was this whole phenomenon, let's say, around group thinking. So ideas were changing very quickly. So we've been seeing which are the limits of that. And with the Pluto, I think we're gonna be forced in the next decade and even more to find ways to cooperate, because I don't feel there is another option, like which are the limits of the collective, but also what are going to be the advantages of the collective once we're going to look, because even when you think about the internet, I'm a big fan, but then we're having the issues with data, with surveillance, with privacy, and these are all topics that's going to come up. But like everything in life, right, like everything has a shadow side. So, but since we know this, that's the thing that I love as astrologers, that we know a bit kind of the trends that are coming up, and also with these planets moving into fire signs, you really need to understand what we stand for first, and then how can we connect all of this. So I think we're gonna manage to move from this separate. I'm quite optimistic. I like to say I'm very optimistic by nature. Not everyone is like, we are doomed, or what is the sense of everything? I'm like, oh my God, it's so boring. Even with children, to be frank with you, I'm like, oh, what? Like, do we have like the arrogance to think that our children cannot make any possible change? That for me it's crazy. I'm like, what's the point of bringing new life? It's just like, okay, we're taking for granted that this new life can do anything in a different way. I think it's really unfair, to be honest. So yeah, curious to see what's gonna come next.
Yes, this is where the conversation goes when you get two people with Aquarian Sag vibes going on, right? Of course, it would end up in this direction, right? But I just want to say thank you so much, Giorgia. Once again, everybody, Giorgia is coming to Synchronicity University as part of the May 2025 speaker series. And you can see how brilliant she is. You can see why I love her content so much online, why I share it in my stories. And look at all that we gained just talking about the wonderful things we spoke of today. But Georgia is actually going to be teaching on retrograde planets. So you can imagine the depth and nuance and love and wisdom that she's going to bring to that topic as well. So, Georgia, just thank you. Thank you so much. I just have loved getting to know you. I've loved your content, and I just love seeing you shine. Just keep shining the way that you do.
Thank you, Nadia. Thank you for having me. I'm super looking forward for the class. I got lots of insights to share. So please join if you're interested in soul, evolution, change, transformation, repetitions, and loops. Yeah, so just join. I'm gonna see you there.
Oh my God. And I have a few retrograde planets. So, yes, I will be paying attention to that class. That's for sure. Well, thank you so much again, Georgia. You have my gratitude, my love. And thank you, everybody out there, for watching. Until we connect again, take care. Bye.
Ciao. Bye.